We are still in our low spend month, and we are rolling this into February because I officially made my bulk meat order, and that'll be coming in a couple weeks. So one thing I'm focusing on, trying to get some of those big meats that are in like roast and things, and I want to cook them up, and then I can refreeze them in different things so I can pull them out as easy meals, which I usually focus February as fill your freezer February. I've actually done that for years over on my blog, but it's a way of like prepping for spring and summer. I do a bunch of biscuits in the freezer, some easy meals like my kids like bean burritos and different things. But I really want to get a lot of that meat out that we haven't went through that I can cook up and then put in there for quesadillas or easy lunches or pasta salad or different things. So that's what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna share some meals that we've been having. Today I was working on raspberry lemon orange buns, and they are amazing. The recipe isn't originally for cardamom buns, but I have tweaked it to do a raspberry lemon, and it was a wonderful way to use up the rest of my raspberries in my freezer. So I'm picking things from the freezer and I'm trying to repurpose them, whether we eat them today as a meal or I put them back in the freezer.
My philosophy in the kitchen is if I can get it at a bakery, I can learn to make it. And I'm gonna leave the original video with the recipe in the description notes, but I'm gonna walk you through it because I feel like we just get intimidated. But this makes a lot, so it's a great activity to do on the weekend with your children. It's fun and it's so enjoyable, but it's really freezer friendly. So I just put it in freezer bags after and then put it in the freezer, and it easily warms up in the oven, or you can defrost it on the counter overnight. And I'm showing the dough because you literally mix it for 15 to 20 minutes until it gets that elastic type look. So you're gonna start out and it's gonna look like a bread dough, but keep mixing and keep mixing and keep mixing. And it heats up the dough. So what I'm doing here is saran wrapping it, which is like the only time I use saran wrap, but you need to let it rest in the fridge to kind of cool down and relax. And in the meantime, I'm making my filling, which is sugar, orange peel, some extract, I did vanilla and orange, and then butter that is softened, and I mix it up in a bowl. And here you see me beating down my raspberries from Azure. I get them from Azure. They're really great. I'm just dreaming of being able to grow my own fruit. Maybe this year we'll get a homestead. I don't know. So after about an hour, I start rolling out the dough, and it's a little hard to work with at first, but little by little it'll come together. And I don't flour a lot. I do use my huge silicone baking mat, but I'm only sprinkling enough on there, and I'm moving the dough around a little at a time to make sure it doesn't stick, but I don't want to add a lot of extra flour into it when it's relaxed. So here I am, I'm slathering on all that butter and sugar mixture and then putting in, and I just kind of press the frozen raspberries into it. And then I fold it over, and you have to pinch the sides pretty good. That way, as you roll it out again, all that filling doesn't squirt out. And I forgot, I'm not folding it in thirds, I'm folding it in half, and then pinching those sides, like I said, really well. And then I'm gonna go through and roll it out. I do not do any kind of measuring, but I probably should have since I was doing this video. But it's a very large rectangle. You'll see here in a minute. And then I go through with my bench scraper, and I'm just cutting strips. In her video, she actually weighs them out. I don't find it's really necessary, but I go through and I just cut all the strips at once, and that's easier to go through and just roll everything. And she shows a few different ways in her video on how to do it, but I love this because my kids say they look like roses, so that's what I do. But it needs to rest for a couple hours until it gets spongy, and then you can bake it, and they are amazing. And here I'm showing you, since we did all that fun stuff, I needed a quick dinner. So I'm showing you roasted red peppers. I buy this because it does not have red dyes in it, some broth, some pasta, and some Parmesan. And in this recipe, I like to use sausage, and I just cook that up. It's a one-pot meal. My kids love it. I blend up with I now have a stick blender for my birthday, but I used to just use my Vitamix and blend up the roasted peppers with a little bit of the juice, but I don't use all of the juice. And once the sausage is cooked, I add the roasted red pepper sauce and then broth. Here I was running late, so I just added the frozen broth and let it come up to temperature before I added in the pasta noodles. And basically I add enough broth when I dump in the pasta. The broth is just covering the noodles, so it's not a estimate, but if it's a little brothy, my kids are totally fine. So it's an alternate to a spaghetti type dinner, but having a different flavor profile. And now that it's defrosted, I'm gonna pour in my noodles, and then once that's cooked, I just shred in some Parmesan. Now, if you have dairy in your family, you can absolutely add a little bit splash of cream at the end, but we don't add it because I don't always have it available. So I just do the Parmesan cheese, and then usually I serve it with some fresh bread on the side. This night we had dessert with the raspberry buns. Because time and children got away from me on this day, I'm starting to prep for tomorrow, where I go through more of that meat. And what I'm doing here is prepping a big batch of focaccia. My children like the flavor of it, and I like it because it can go with soup, it can be made into sandwiches, it can just be ate on its side, and it's also a really great and easy thing to freeze in gallon zipper bags. I make a big batch, and my cookie sheets are not regular cookies sheets. They're like half sheets, or like the big huge cake ones. I'm not even sure now that I'm talking to you. But I make a really big batch, and then that is actually can be divided into 4 meals for us. And then usually I save one on the side. I meant to have it with the red pepper pasta dinner, but I didn't get to it in time. But I'm prepping up. It is sourdough, so I'm doing the stretch and folds and getting that ready, so tomorrow I can make it during my cooking. And again, I will leave this link, but it's so easy to do, and it's kind of a lot of hands off. And then we are on to the next day. So I'm prepping a lot of that food, and what I decided to do is just to get a bunch of meat going at the same time. And what I ended up doing is that I just let the children pick and choose what they wanted for dinner, with some focaccia bread and some fresh vegetables at the end of the day, because it did end up being a long day. But I'm prepping a whole bunch of protein because I already have my oven on. I figured, I could put at least 2 things in the oven. So here I am prepping some oranges and getting some spices for a pork roast. It is going to be carnitas, and this will go on nachos or on tacos or a haystack night. And I just kind of mix it up. I do some cumin and garlic, and then I use orange and lemon. And then I do end up adding a little broth, but a really good thing I love to do with meat is braise it. And what that means is you cook the meat in a liquid on low heat for hours. So again, it's a great thing to do on the weekend because you could prep a lot in the oven at once, so you can use your energy wisely and have it to be prepped and put in the freezer and just pull it out at a different time, but your meat is already cooked. So I'm adding cumin, some onion, some chili powder, some salt, pepper, garlic. Didn't have any fresh, so I used what I had. And then I like to season all sides in my cast iron before I put it in the oven. And then the other pan in the oven is short ribs with a red wine. And then I did some ribs also. And then here in the crock pot, I'm just cooking a whole chicken. I put a splash of broth in the bottom and some salt, pepper, garlic, and kind of let that do its thing too. And then here I am prepping my focaccia. You see how it's starting to bubble and it's not really sticking to the sides. It was a little slow to come out, so technically I could have left it a little bit longer, but this next rise will just sit and I cook it when it's actually ready, but I got it done early enough. And we've been messing with some flavor profiles on focaccia to make some sweet, like a cinnamon sugar. and trying to see how we like it. And right now our two favorite is actually molasses, and then we just do a plain with drizzle with olive oil and some chunky salt. How I liked my focaccia rise is I actually just put another cookie sheet inverted on top of it, and then I don't have to worry about it sticking to any towels or anything like that. And then when I peek on it throughout the day, and when it's ready, I go ahead and bake it. And I have a bunch of different meats already in my freezer. How I like to do it is that I just like to have components in the freezer, so when I pull them out, I can decide what I want to make with it. I'm not stuck with a pasta dish only being able to eat a pasta dish. So that is how I like it. Thanks for sticking around for this week's video. I know I have a lot of videos coming up, so I hope you subscribe and stick around.